Alright guys, welcome back. So in this episode, we're focusing on the leaderboard. I know in the last episode we started on the leaderboard, but we didn't finish it. We still had a bug, and so I put some time in to get it cleared up, and I got it. I got a solution. I got it working. Okay, so where do we start? There's a few things that I changed around. Let's start with the game manager. Alright. So we can look at this function, select this answer. In fact, before we even do that, let's look at this variable here. I created this new variable game count. So public static int game count, public int game count. This is just a getter and a setter. The reason why I created this is because if we go to the leaderboard manager, and we go to save score, and I'll elaborate more on this later, but I just want to touch upon this first. Part of the reason why we were getting the same score showing up for all four of the high scores, even though, so we say we got the high score is 355, it would get saved for each one of the high scores every single time. So say we got a high score of 400, it got saved for each one. And the reason why that was happening was because every time I call save score, well, this functionality was in the create new leaderboard, but every time I call the save score, it would add all those scores, right? It would add all these high scores to it, and because it allows us duplicate answers. So for example, if one of these scores, so say high score 00 is 400, if I continue to add this every time I call save score, or every time I create a new leaderboard, it's going to add it to that array. And so we get 400, 400, 400, 400, right? And when I sort it, even if there's a 400, a 200, there's 400, there's a 200, and there's a 100. Well, when the array sorts it, and I only grab the four greatest number, or the last four indexes in that array, it's going to return 400, 400, 400, 400. And that's why we were getting like 355 and all of four of the high scores. So with this game count, what this says is, if the user hasn't started a new game, or if the game count is less than 1, right? If the game count is 0, right? Pull all of the high scores. Once the game count is 1 or greater, do not pull the high scores anymore, because they are already added to the array, and we don't need to count them anymore. We only count that. So if we got another 400, it would have to be like an in-game session score. And so that's the whole point. I covered this in the last video. Is that the whole point of the new session array is to grab the new points. The new points that was created when the user starts this game, and then before I call the sort on the array, I also need to grab the player prefs points from any previous sessions. And so that's basically what this is doing. It adds the score from the final game when the user hits a lose condition, right? If it's the first game, the very first game, we add in the high score for any previous sessions, and then once that's done, we call the sort. So when the user creates, I'm going to talk about it right now then, why not the leaderboard, the stuff. When the user creates the leaderboard, then it's going to go through this for loop. But you notice there's an if statement before we even get to this for loop, and it's the same thing here. If say for example, right, the person is a completely new game, the player has no high score saved, and there's no points whatsoever. If you try to go through this array list, because it's empty, it's going to give you the index out of bounds, right? Because this array list is going to be empty, and if the game hasn't started, then the game count hasn't even incremented. Let me show you guys what that look like. So say I start the game, right? There's a new game, there's a fresh game, right? If I was to press the leaderboard and I haven't played the game before, there are no previous sessions, right? No scores got saved, and there is no scores from the previous session. So right, and without this line of code, right? Without this line of code, it's gonna go into this new session array and try to loop through it. And when it say, oops, this array count is 0, and it's gonna loop right to size 0 minus 1. That's -1. Doesn't give index out of bounds on the array, which is expected. By throwing this in, if this is a completely new game, the new session array count size is less than 1, just call save score 0. We just put in the 0 score because the user doesn't have any score. We just pull in that score, and what's going to happen is, since this is a new game and the game count hasn't been incremented because the person has pressed start, then just pull the previous just pull the player prefs. If there aren't no player prefs, then the default score is 0. And so even when they create the leaderboard in this state, it's just all 0, no errors, as you can see here. It's fine. You can accept that. And so I needed to account for that particular state, because you don't want to start. That'd be pretty bad. You start the game, press one button, and it already breaks. That's pretty bad. So I caught that. So that's what's going on. And so you notice that this save score and create new leaderboard it's completely different from the last video. So I already touched save score. Back to this function, and so it grabs the array. So this is the same loop from the last video. The same loop. I have this print function here, and these are just debugs. It's all of this stuff that you're seeing to the right here. Wait, we don't need it. I'm not going to delete it, because if any other potential bugs around this pop up, I would need to debug and make sure everything's working. But now that I know that it works, I can continue. I can comment those stuff out. I also added a score reset, and this basically delete any of the player prefs, and it clears out the array, so you get the score back to 0. That's why you have all zeros, because I had scores from the previous sessions, but now it's all saved up. Alright, the start function is completely empty. All the code is commented out. I know I had to create new leaderboard in that. Get rid of that. Don't need it. But this is your way to create a local leaderboard. Alright, so let's go to game manager. So back to game count. So where does game count get incremented? Where does it get used? It gets used in this function, deactivate menus. And deactivate menus is basically start game, or start new game. Where's it being called? I'll show you guys right now. When a user presses the start button, that's when that function is called. Just to verify that I'm not just talking out of my ass, we go to the start button, we look at the multi-image button script, we see game manager, what function, on click, game manager, deactivate menus. And so that's what's happening when a person pressed the start, when the user pressed the start button. We increment the game count plus 1. And then we just deactivate all menus, and then we unpause the game. That's what's happening. We should also look at this function. Where is it? Select this answer. Now, I didn't make too many changes to this function. The only thing is that there was an else. So see this if right here? There was an else to this if. And basically what was happening, once the time ran out, you would have to press another option, because these options is what triggers that function. Select this answer. So that function is attached to those options. That's why even when the timer ran out, like, you know, if I press start, all right, I'm just going to click through a bunch of answers just to shorten the time. Yeah, come on, 20 seconds, that's still too long. All right, it's 10 seconds. It's 5. All right, just wait 5 seconds. All right, once the timer is up, ding. All right, now you notice that right when the time is up, this dialog say game over, reset. And I actually want to put the high score right in here, but that's another video. That's next video. But you notice that this dialog box comes up, reset, game over. That's what I wanted to do initially, but I tied it to the options, and so this wouldn't have popped up previously because you'd have to press one of the option button. All right, it's going to hit that else statement, right? The time does equal 0, and an option was pressed. Then I will do that else statement, and then this will pop up. But then now I move this. So where is this now? How is this working now? So if we go to the loading script, the first thing we need to do, we need to get access to the game manager. So just public game manager, and then you find the object that this loading script is attached to, and just drag the game manager into it. Right? And then on the update function, where the time is decrementing, we just call once the time, so if the current amount, right, basically if there's time left, that's yeah, so if the current amount is greater than 0, so if this is not empty, keep decrementing the time. That's all it's doing. Is not time left, because time left goes to this function here. It gets the distance, and so this is technically the distance, but it gets the distance divided by speed, and this is how you get the time. And so if there's nothing left to decrement, if this is completely empty, then it goes to this done. But what I also did is that once it's empty, activate the lose menu. And so that's why we get this right after. And then once I press the reset, this reset button right here is attached to the reset function in Game Manager. So let's go to the reset function. This is the reset function right here. I'm going to open this up. So reset the index back to 0, and it's attached to the speed array. So if you notice, when I keep clicking to the right answers, the time gets shorter and shorter. That's what this does. It set this back to 20 seconds, which is the initial time. We save the score. And so we already discussed this earlier in the video, but it adds the score into the array, and then it evaluates and sorts the array. It updates the score. Since this is true, this is basically a reset, and it sets it to 0. And then this resets the loading circle, so basically the timer, and then it activates the pause menu. So that's what happens. Just to prove it, when I press reset, it activates, notice, the timer, the points, the multiplier, it's back to 0, 20 seconds on the timer, and I press start. Notice the leaderboard is 195, and we still get 9999999. And what's happening is we only have one score in this session, and there's only one element in the array, and so these ones didn't get overwritten, and so that could be tweaked, but I'll leave it right now. See, we got an argument out of range right now. Alright, I'll focus on that for the next video, but I'll just continue with what I got so far. Alright, update score. reset to 0, load circle, update, reset the timer, and then activate the pause menu. Start, and you can go all over again. So, to prove to you guys that the leaderboard works, I'm just going to play a few games. So I press start, so I press leaderboard, 195, notice we have 0, 0, 0, which is good. See, it shows that it worked. So I'm just going to start, right? I'm going to get 45. I'm going to let the timer run out. Press the reset. We go to leaderboard, 195, 45, all right? So let's press start. All right, let's get 25. It's gonna take 20 seconds. Reset, go to leaderboard, 195, 45, 25. All right, press start. So say, let's get 30 this time. Let's get 35. Again. Let's reset. Leaderboards. 195, 45, 35, 25. And then we get one more thing to test. Did this get saved? So I'm going to kill this game. I'm going to restart it. Press, oop, that's a mistake. Anyway, stop it, start, go straight to leaderboard, 195, 45, 35, 25. And you notice that we got 25 before we got 35, and it incremented because that's the sort function that I talked about earlier. And so there it is. If you guys have any questions and comments, put it in the comment section below. If you found your own way or an alternative way to figuring out this problem, please share it. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. But this is what I got. Thank you for watching. I'm stopping it for right now. I know I got a bug earlier with the leaderboards. I'm going to look into that and then get you that in the next video. But thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe.